welcome to the Quincy Access Television studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Thank you for joining us for A Conversation With, a program that really looks at citywide issues. We have as guests Councillor at Large folks, and today joining me is one of those councillors, and that would be Nina Liang.
Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you, and of course we talked about this. You're always welcome to come into Quincy Access Television and really talk about, as I had mentioned, city issues at large.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and there's so much to talk about, so I appreciate every opportunity to come back and chat with you guys.
And we did have you in during the summer break. We should mention that council has resumed. So I'd like to actually start with a few items that were before the council just a few nights ago. We are recording this program, I believe, on the 5th of September.
It is September, believe it or not. It is no longer August.
I know. We're still trying to hold on to summer, you and I.
I am also in denial, so I appreciate that.
The Special Permit Granting Authority is a unit that is constructed that is made up of councillors. They will be meeting regarding a property on Center Street, really adjacent to or part of right now the Home Depot. So talk about that. That's upcoming business before the council.
Yeah, I would love to. I want to start by just clarifying what the Special Permit Granting Authority, or SPGA for short, is, because when I came into the council back in 2015, 2016, the SPGA had met councilors had met as the SPGA in the past on another project, which was still ongoing at the time. And so I had a lot to learn about what that meant and what our role is and, what our responsibility is as the SPGA. So, for that purpose, I just want to make sure to clarify for other folks as well what that is. So the Special Permit Granting Authority is essentially a voting body on, large scale projects. The planning board has acted as the SPGA in the past, but the city council primarily does act as that body, meaning when we go into a meeting in our capacity as a Special Permit Granting Authority, we no longer wear our city council hat, we wear our SPGA hat.
So there are different rules, basically.
Yeah, different rules, different requirements on what we can do. It essentially is still the same group of people. It's still going to be me, just not as your city councilor anymore, as an SPGA member.
You'll look the same, though.
I'll look the same. Yeah, it's probably a different outfit, but yes, I will look the same. And so one of the proposals in front of us that we had discussed at this previous week's meeting is, you're right, the property adjacent to Home Depot. So in the past, back in 2001, when Home Depot first went to that property, the city council again met as the SPGA. To discuss, that project in its entirety, how it's going to be developed, what it's going to look like, the scale of the project. And now that there is another proposal to a property that is adjacent to Home Depot, it's still technically within that, within that property line of Home Depot, of the original approval through the SPGA.
Right.
We need to make some changes now because Home Depot doesn't use that piece of land that's in their property line, and that's the piece of land that's being looked at for this development. So in order to change it, to open it up for that new development, for that new proposal, we now have to meet again as an SPGA body to make that change, because the SPGA body was the first one to create it. Does that make sense? So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. The councillor of the ward, Brian Palmucci, had mentioned that there really isn't opposition to this use, which is a storage facility of some kind, a self-storage facility, because I guess there have been community meetings.
There have, yeah. Councilor Palmucci, he's always really great at doing community meetings. He's on top of them with making sure that residents are in touch with what's going on, and so he had them over the summer as well for this particular project as soon as it got proposed. And it was at that meeting that, again, generally, obviously people's concerns are mainly going to be traffic issues, and with the storage unit, the traffic that goes to a storage unit facility is drastically less than a residential or even an office space, so that being the primary concern, there was not too much objection. That being said, things can come up. We're still going to have public hearings because this is still part of that process, and we want to continue to hear from folks. But as of right now, there wasn't a lot of objection to it.
And I believe the meeting date is October 7th?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So we're going to be having the public hearing at 6:30 p.m. on October 7th. And again, we are going to be hearing from the public sitting in the council chambers. All of the councilors are going to be there, but we're going to be hearing the public hearing, in the meeting as the SPGA, as the Special Permit Granting Authority after that. So I encourage people to come either for the public hearing portion or for the SPGA meeting, or ideally both if folks can make it.
One of the other items that came up, we'll talk about zoning. We'll kind of continue with that a bit. that came up at the last meeting was an analysis of the current zoning. Talk a little bit about that. There was some talk about maybe looking into that.
Yeah, so this is one of the things I'm really excited about. You know, again, in the last 4 years that I've been doing this, and even before then, you can see, you know, very quickly this incline of growth with the number of people, the number of cars on the road. Even if we have a lot of folks who are moving into areas that are right near T stations or right near bus lines, we know how reliable the T is, right? So
We'll talk about that.
yes, even if they don't have cars, though, we have a lot of car sharing apps out there now, and that is still physically a car on the road, right? So there is no decrease in cars on the road right now, unfortunately, not just here, but, you know, across the whole state. You know, that's an issue right now. We have an issue with, you know, a huge burden on residents right now, on homeowners, because our tax base is primarily on homeowners. You know, we don't have a huge growth in commercial. We are definitely making waves in that direction, but we don't see it happening right now. We don't certainly feel the benefits right now from it. You know, all of these things sort of tied together, I believe, really can be attacked first and foremost with our zoning. You know, if you look at our zoning code right now, I mean, obviously it's outdated. You know, a lot has changed in the last, like I said, 4 years that I've been on the council. But even in the last 10 years, a lot has changed. You know, there's a lot of interest in the city of Quincy from, you know, folks outside of the city. There's a lot of people who are looking to invest here in this city, whether as, you know, their primary residence or as investment properties. And there's a lot of demolition and rebuilding happening in, you know, small neighborhoods as well as the downtown. And under the current zoning code, it's pretty lax what you can do with that. And so this is the prime opportunity to go back and look at the entire city and say, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that we're developing in a smart way? And I know a lot of people always say smart development.
Right.
With respect to this, what I mean with that is by being very strategic and intentional about where you are developing and what kind of development you're putting in a certain area. So, you know, for business areas, business districts like Quincy Center, like Wollaston, like Norfolk Downs, right? I mean, those areas, yes, we want to see, you know, more high rises. We want to see more commercial. We want to see more business there, because it's a business district. But then you go into neighborhoods, and I don't want to see, you know, a huge sort of influx of apartments and townhouses and condos. Like I want to preserve those neighborhoods that are currently neighborhoods, you know? And so the only way we can do that, I think, is by looking at holistically and not piecemeal, because then you can say, okay, it makes sense that we're protecting this neighborhood over here because we're offsetting it by creating a commercial base over here, you know? And again, I think in the long term, that'll help us to incentivize commercial growth, which will help to offset the residential tax burden and hopefully help to alleviate the traffic, because we know where residential units can go, and people can't just cram in units every piece of open land they find, you know? So I think it's going to have a really positive ripple effect, and I'm really excited to see us start moving the ball downfield.
I believe the mayor had referenced at a recent media advisory that he had toured the city recently with the majority leader, Ron Mariano, and one of the topics was traffic. I'm sure traffic comes up a lot with not only yourself, but your colleagues.
Yeah, it does. And you know, again, I think we created the new TPAL department, which I guess isn't so new anymore, the traffic, parking, alarm, and lighting department. And they've certainly been doing a great job with looking at different areas of the city that they need to improve upon, adding new streetlights, taking streetlights away, adding stop signs, maybe removing them, you know, and inserting new crosswalks. It's a slow process, but it's because it's so thorough. And that is certainly one step we're taking in the right direction. But again, I think with improvements to the transit system, which is something we have little control over, we have to look at other ways that we can improve people's way of life with how they commute around the city. You know, Quincycles is really active. I'm always really proud of the work that they do. I admire the work that they bring to the city, because you now see some more bike paths. You know, we're hoping to see more of them as more developers are bringing on large-scale projects. You know, we are talking to them about making sure to commit to creating designated bike lanes. You know, so we need to think about alternative means of transportation.
Somebody actually asked me about, a viewer had mentioned, I see these bike lanes, you should do a program on how to respect, how a vehicle respects a bike lane. It's important, because I don't think all drivers know.
No, they don't. And I think that'd be a great idea. Again, I highly recommend talking to Quincycles. I think it'd be great if we can have some of them in here. They do events, especially throughout the summer as well, where folks can join in and do rides with them. And they go to Blue Hills, and they go out to the city, they go over to Nepal. It's, I mean, a really, really fun group. And I think having them in and doing an educational program is a great idea. I think, you know, unless you ride a bike yourself or you know somebody that rides a bike, sometimes you don't know what the hand signals are, for example, right? I mean, there's official hand signals when you're riding a bike with when you turn, and even for the bicyclists themselves, if they're a new rider, what are those hand signals? And when are you supposed to be on the sidewalk and not on the sidewalk, and thinking about what that looks like, I think, is important. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'd love to be a part of it too if you schedule something like that.
Sure. MBTA, of course, I don't think a program goes by where we don't bring up the MBTA. We should mention that the Wollaston station, prior to sitting down the last time, it wasn't yet completed. It is now completed. However, there is still work being done at other stations throughout the city. One of the most recent, I believe, tweets from the MBTA, which you responded to, was something about completely redesigning. If a resident could completely redesign the bus network, what would you do? And your response to that was more buses and increased frequency in the North Quincy-Wollaston area to accommodate for the loss of parking. Talk about that.
I felt very sassy when I retweeted that because I don't like to go on social media and, stir up anything. But obviously I'm coming into it with a lot of frustration, as a lot of people are feeling across the state, but particularly here in Quincy. We've been through a lot. We've been put through a lot from the MBTA here in the city. And it's wonderful that Wollaston Station is open. For those of you who are at home who take the T, I recommend you go over there and check it out. It's a beautiful station. I love that it's accessible now. But that doesn't take away from the reliability of the trains being on time. All the talk going into Wollaston Station opening, people were, commenting, okay, well, great. We can now wait on a beautiful new platform for 30 minutes. And I don't blame, they're absolutely right, You look at that as, an alternative means of transportation. It helps to alleviate traffic that we have for problems right now, but it's unreliable, And then on top of that, you look at the way you get to the train, which are the buses, And that's something that I look at. I had the 211 bus, right across the street from my house, and the frequency of that bus is not great. Sometimes I work late, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and that bus stops running 7:30. And that's a reason for me, in a particularly nasty weather, if I've got a lot of stuff to carry back and forth between work, to think to myself, am I going to drive to work today, or am I going to take the bus, which I know will not be there on a cold January night at 9 o'clock at night, So, and that's just one bus line and one rider. You think about all the other riders across the city who have to deal with, okay, I had to plan for the fact that there won't be a bus past 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I have to plan for the fact that there won't be a bus for another hour when I get back. So I need to plan my day on getting back to make sure I get that bus, because it only runs every hour, which is not convenient, for a lot of folks who need to maybe catch a bus last minute. And so you want to think, okay, and say, maybe I'll drive to the T then. I'll drive and park my car at the T station so I don't have to worry about the frequency of the buses. But guess what? There's nowhere to park, So until we can have the North Quincy garage online to have parking there again, and until we can figure out what we're doing at Quincy Center, and get some parking online over there, having an increased number of buses is, I think, really going to help to take people off the road in their cars, because now they do have a reliable means to get to the train station. The argument is, usually, well, there's not enough ridership, so we can't have the buses there. It's a catch-22, There's no ridership because you don't have the buses, You don't have the ridership because your buses run every hour, and people can't dictate their lives around a 60-minute window to wait for a bus, particularly when your trains are running late to begin with. So I think, again, I appreciate that they're doing all these repairs. Wollaston Station looks wonderful. I'm really excited for the garage to open at North Quincy, but until all those things happen, and until the trains run more frequently, and until parking is available, increased buses will really help to alleviate the traffic.
We should mention that the address that I'm just going to give out, Pound Better Bus Project, is something that folks can go onto, and just like you responded to the tweet from the MBTA, they can respond and suggest ways for improvement.
And I think they should. Please make sure to do that. The MBTA has quite a number of people working on different projects, different teams of people, but the more they hear from people, the better. So I encourage everyone to go on to that website. Thank you for mentioning it, and putting in your input. Even if you have questions and you just want to put out questions to them, the more people that reach out to them, I think the better.
The city solicitor was up before the council just a few nights ago for, looking for additional money for legal costs, and it was $200,000 for two projects in the city. We should mention two ongoing issues. One is the Algonquin gas at the Fore River Basin. The other is the Long Island Bridge.
Yes. So, that was approved unanimously. It was a request from the solicitor to ask for additional support to continue basically the battle that we're in for both of those issues. And now we heard from a number of people on both of those issues well before coming into this meeting, and for me personally, I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleagues, but for me personally, I look at Long Island Bridge, and for the last, 2 years that this has been happening, we've yet to get any outreach from the city of Boston. There are neighbors, they're right next door to us. I can walk from my house and hit, the border between Quincy and Boston in 5 minutes, and that first and foremost is the most discouraging thing to me, and frankly the most upsetting, because regardless of what they're going to put out there, what they're going to do out there, the first step is picking up the phone and having a conversation. 2 years have gone by and that hasn't happened, whether it's a phone call, an email, social media. There's quite a number of ways to connect these days. There's 9 of us on the council. We've got state legislators, we've got the mayor's office, and I live in that neighborhood. I've not heard from anybody on what they're proposing to bring to the city of Quincy, and it takes just a simple phone call to say, we want to sit down with residents of Quincy. We want to come and meet with you guys. We want to talk about what we're looking to do, and let's find a way to make this work together. And the fact that that first step hasn't happened, and in fact they've skipped over that step and started making moves to move forward on the project on their own without talking to any of us as residents of this city, is really upsetting and incredibly concerning. We're doing everything that we can to protect our needs and our concerns. We haven't had an opportunity to talk to them about it because they haven't asked. So we're taking the initiative to take care of it ourselves and make sure that we're protecting our own rights here in the city. It's really important that we make sure that we stay on top of that, because again, if we wait for them to reach out and ask us how they can help, it's not going to happen. It's been 2 years. We need to be proactive in making sure that our voices are heard. With respect to the compressor station, it's another sort of similar issue, right? We need to make sure that our voice is heard. There's Weymouth and there's Braintree who's also in this fight with us. And, we're partnering with them essentially. The 3 of us are getting together to make sure that all of our voices are heard. And we are part of that coalition with Braintree and with Weymouth. And this is a piece of us sort of stepping up and showing them that we are a part of that fight with them.
The concern for the bridge, we should back up, is the city of Quincy doesn't want the bridge to be rebuilt because of increased traffic. Mm-hmm. And they're favoring, the city of Quincy would favor some kind of ferry service from Boston. However, Boston wants the bridge back. And the compressor station, I think the concern there is the closeness to a compressor station to neighborhoods. So it really would set a new precedent. But there's also been noise monitoring that has been, it's some kind of legislation that has been filed regarding noise monitoring, correct?
Yep, and air quality too. We're looking at air quality as well. And I appreciate that you bring that up, because when I say that we're working this with respect to the compressor station, when I say that we're working with Braintree and with Weymouth, we're also working across the board. It's not just city council to city council, it's mayor to mayor. All the state legislators are working with us. Congressman Lynch is spearheading that effort. Not too long ago, he called a meeting and said, we all need to make sure we're working together. If we're all on the same page, great. Let's make sure that we are all working together to give, the biggest, most powerful voice for our residents. And again, this is part of that process, right? I mean, it is absolutely unprecedented what they're looking to do here. You see the growth that's happening not just in Quincy, but now you see the ripple effect onto Weymouth and Braintree. It's not like people are deserting this area. It's only going to grow more condensed with more people moving in. You're going to see, I think a larger growth of new homes being built in the Weymouth area and the Braintree area, more people buying homes for the first time in that area as well. It's just, I don't understand why they are so dead set on such a heavy residential area for this. I think it's absolutely absurd. And, to your point also with the Long Island Bridge, you're right. Boston, won't even look and consider this ferry service opportunity, which is completely unimpacted by the 30 minutes over under I like to play on Neponset Bridge in the morning. But in all reality, you look at if God forbid something happens on that facility and you need to get an ambulance from there to one of the hospitals, whether it be South Shore Hospital or even Boston Medical Center, since it's right over the bridge over there, you have to compete with all of that morning traffic coming up from the South Shore, not just Quincy, all of the South Shore, and you look at what Boston is doing with some of their development in the seaport, and looking at, they're also looking at rezoning now as well, and looking at how they're doing their zoning meetings. I mean, there's plenty of land in Boston that you can put $90 million into to create a beautiful facility that has access to a number of wonderful hospitals, where you don't have to compete with trying to get through a tiny neighborhood over Neponset Bridge, through the morning traffic, over to a hospital. I mean, what they're going to build out there, what they're saying they're going to build out there, is not something I'm against. It's all of the pending traffic. It's all the potential additional development that I'm concerned about. And again, it's just the lack of communication. $90 million is a lot. There's a lot of space in the city of Boston where if they put $90 million into it, I can guarantee you they can build a beautiful facility to serve the people that they want to serve.
We should mention that this program we were actually supposed to record yesterday. However, yesterday you got called away because of construction, and we talked about this as we began to get ready for this show today. It's a good thing that roads and sidewalks are being addressed. However, I guess there was some miscommunication with the businesses as far as who would be impacted during which hours.
Yeah, and I appreciate, first of all, you rescheduling with me. I got the call as I was making my way over here, so I didn't realize the detour was going to take me away from you for so long, so I appreciate you rescheduling. But yeah, no, I got a call because up on the corner of Billings and Hancock, there are 4 businesses there, and the sidewalks, like you said, they're getting redone, and they're making sure that the new angles of where you have the handicap ramp down to the street are done well. And so this is part of that citywide improvement. We need to fix our streets. We need to fix the infrastructure. It's not going to be pretty when you dig it up to do so, but once you lay it down and you pave it, it's amazing. So it's part of that process that we aren't necessarily happy with when you see everything being dug up, and it causes detours for pedestrians and for cars. It's a very unpleasant process, but afterwards you get a beautiful result. I think what makes that difficult to go through is not knowing when it's going to happen, which is what happened yesterday, unfortunately. And so there was some loss of access to some of the businesses. Some of the storefronts are right on the sidewalk. So the second you shut down the sidewalk, you can no longer go into the business. And, in talking and connecting with the store owners yesterday, they were fine with getting a brand new sidewalk in front of their storefront. Who wouldn't be? Their concern was the time frame. Their concern was knowing when it was going to happen, what was going to happen, how long it would go on. And that, I think, is really important to hold on to, because it's not that we don't want it. It's not that we're not happy with it. It's not that, we don't want construction here. Of course, we want it to get done. It's the knowing that is the most important thing.
So it's better communication.
100%. And I've said it through and through all 4 years that I've been here with different projects, is communication is key. At not knowing and the guessing, it only causes concern, and it causes issues for everyone all around. The second you pick up the phone and you can communicate what's going on, that is going to help alleviate a lot of those problems. And so it's, one step in the work that needs to get done on Hancock Street. There's going to be plenty of more work being done to fix the roads and the actual street itself with infrastructure work. And that'll be, coming down the pike. And both the mayor's office, the DPW, and the folks who are doing the actual construction are working hard to make sure that they're communicating one-on-one with not just the folks working in the stores, but the business owners as well. So I'm glad that they're taking this as a learning lesson and saying, okay, what can we do better? And after that, project, I'm sure they're going to look back and say, okay, what can we continue to do better? And that's what I would hope that they would do.
We are coming down to the end of this program. We probably have time for one or two more items. But
Sure.
Talk about the reinstatement of the Disabilities Commission.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. Councilor Mahoney actually brought that to the rest of the council, and we were all really excited to support it. Quite a number of residents I had the opportunity to meet with before Councilor Mahoney had brought it to us had expressed that this was something they were working on. We have a number of great commissions in this city, and it's only going to work if we have the support of the residents to support the work. People like this who are really passionate about about the commission itself and the important work it can do, and that's where these residents came in. You know, they talked about the need for Disabilities Commission to advocate for, you know, access at meetings, for, you know, physical access to different locations and stores across the city. You know, we are going through this huge wave of development. Are we making sure that ADA compliance is a top priority? You know, we do need to make sure that is the case. And so when these residents come up and they're passionate and they want to help and be a part of fixing these problems, that's where these commissions come in, you know? And so when we were able to reinstate it, I think it was a really good thing. It was a good thing for the council, for the city to acknowledge and recognize that ADA compliance is important to us. You know, it's just as important as making sure that there's affordable housing. It's just as important as making sure that there's, you know, good transportation options. And again, I think that's really important to make sure that there are people who are in our city who don't feel left behind. And this is, I think, a huge success for that reason.
The LGBTQ Commission, Quincy has had Pride Days, so that's ongoing. And I guess the work of this commission, maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so similarly to, again, the Disabilities Commission, right? You have a group of residents who have been advocating and fighting for an issue for so long, to then have an official commission of the city created to support and acknowledge that those issues exist, I think is really important. And so I was really happy to work with some residents and work with the administration to create the first LGBTQ commission in the city. We had our first meeting, we have a second one coming up, and right now we are in the process of doing information finding and making sure that the work we plan on doing moving forward is going to be able to meet the needs of the residents here in the city. You know, it's the first time that we're doing something like this, and so we want to make sure that we're doing a lot of listening first before we go out and implement anything and make any assumptions about anything. It's really important that we do a listening session first and foremost to dictate the work we're doing moving forward. So I'm really excited. It's the first of its kind here, and you know, the folks that are involved in the commission are wonderful people from all different walks of life in the city. You know, we have people from a huge age range. We have people from different ethnic backgrounds, different, you know, experiences in life, and so yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really thrilled for the people to be working on that commission.
We will end with the Parking Advisory Board Mobility Plan.
Yes, thank you. So this is actually something that I've been thinking about in relation to what we can do to fix the, you know, the concerns around what happens when you have so much growth at once, right? The traffic, the congestion, the density issues, you know, reliable transportation options, all of the above. And zoning, I think, is a great step in that direction, working with TPAL, working with residents. But another thing I found when I was looking into other ways that cities and towns have, you know, dealt with this kind of problem is a mobility plan. Now in Europe, they've actually implemented a number of these mobility plans decades ago. California had done one as well recently. And so I started looking at what this mobility plan is and what it means for you know, a rapidly growing city. And essentially what it does is it takes your entire city and it says, what is your development plan over the next 15 to 20 years? And then how can you implement with priority what transportation options are going to look like. And so you have to think about where you're going to put affordable housing units, because maybe you want it to be, you know, easily accessible to the highways and to the trains, right? You want to think about accessibility issues and where you're going to put that. You want to think about our aging population and where you're going to build more senior options for living, you know, and it takes a look at the entire picture and helps to create a plan moving forward. So similarly to what we're doing with the capital improvements, to say we're going to look at the whole city and see what we can improve upon, a mobility plan for any municipality looks at the whole city to say, how can we develop smart and how can we make sure to incorporate all these other factors, transportation, you know, ADA accessibility, different types of housing, the affordability of these housing plans, all of the above. So it's a really intense, very vigorous process to get a mobility plan done for a city. But I'm looking to work with, you know, different groups like QCAN, for example, because mobility plans take in environmental factors as well. So I'm looking to work with community groups to figure out how we can create one for the city. Again, this is still very, very much in its infancy, so I haven't, you know, talked publicly. This is actually the first time I'm talking publicly about it, but I hope people will stay tuned because I will be reaching out to try to get help and support to create this for the city.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
Talking about that plus a lot more.
Never feels
today.
like it's enough time.
No,
Yeah.
well, that's why you have to come back. It's like, you know, you can't, we always leave something unsaid so that you visit again.
Ooh, stay tuned.
Okay. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you at home for watching. You have been watching a program of Quincy Access Television. Please continue to watch QATV for more locally produced programming.